Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In a quiet Washington, D.C., neighborhood not far from Rock Creek Park, but far enough from the center that life seems slowed down, sits an inconspicuous house, almost erased from the urban landscape. A small red brick bungalow with perfectly painted white shutters and an impeccably manicured yard. At first glance, nothing distinguishes this home from the others on this street lined with century-old trees and caring neighbors. Flowers grow quietly, the lawn is always perfectly mowed, and the mailbox never overflows. Neighborhood residents sometimes encounter its owner, Marcus Iite, during his morning walks. He greets politely, exchanges pleasantries, but never lingers. The neighborhood children gaze at him with a certain fascination. He has that air of mystery and authority that one can't quite define. He always wears plain clothes, unmarked but impeccably tailored. His posture, straight as a taut thread, betrays a discipline forged in the fire of something greater than civilian life. He is courteous, always calm, but never grants more than is necessary. Rumors are rife. Some say he works for a government agency. Others whisper that he's a veteran. An old man, a former military history professor, once watched him from afar, between sweeping leaves, and whispered to his wife, "That look. I've only seen that look in men who survived hell." No one knows what Marcus does with his days. He is sometimes seen in the garden, or inside, through the half-open blinds, reading, writing, or doing endless push-ups on the living room rug. No sound ever comes from this house. No music, no voices. Just silence and the shadow of a man who seems to want to forget something, or perhaps keep it locked away. Marcus Iite, 44, a former commander of Delta Force, the highest-ranking U.S. Special Forces, retired 5 years earlier after a classified mission in West Africa turned into a nightmare. Officially decorated, unofficially abandoned, he left the Army with honors, but also with a past too burdensome to share. Since then, he'd lived there, with an almost pathological discretion. He'd learned never to rock the boat, to fade into the background, to blend into the background. But he'd never disarmed his spirit. Every object in the house was positioned according to a defensive logic. Every sortie was a miniature operation. And every night, he slept lightly, like a soldier on an outpost. On April 17th, at 6:23 a.m., everything changed. A dull thud rattled the front door. A sharp metallic crash. The kind of sound that leaves no room for hesitation. Even before the lock gave way, Marcus was standing barefoot on the wooden floor, his gaze already fixed on the door. He had heard the furtive footsteps on the gravel driveway. He knew, and he didn't move. The door exploded under the assault battering ram. 3 men emerged, weapons drawn, in tactical formation. District of Columbia police officers, wearing black bulletproof vests, their faces tense beneath the visors of their helmets. At their head, Detective Inspector Kyle Bradshaw, 45, a veteran of the Special Squad. A tough, self-assured man, convinced that justice is won with punches and that cases are closed when you act quickly. He had received an anonymous call the day before, a computerized voice reporting that this house was harboring suspicious paramilitary activity. An illegal weapon, perhaps trafficking. Enough to secure a summary warrant, signed by a compliant judge. He wanted to hit hard. He didn't expect to come across a man who didn't tremble. Marcus stood there, shirtless, his muscles clenched by years of training. He said nothing. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't back away. He looked Bradshaw in the eyes. A deep, dark gaze, in which no fear shone. Bradshaw stepped forward, gun drawn. He yelled, "On your knees now. You are under arrest for illegal possession of weapons of war and suspicious activity on national territory." But Marcus didn't move. He answered in a low, calm, almost clinical voice, "I'm not who you think I am." The policeman stares at him, hesitant. Another one of those guys, Bradshaw thinks, unable to hide the hint of contempt in his eyes. He's seen arrogant, self-assured men, trying to play tough to impress or defend themselves. But with this one, there's something else. A sharp, almost unnatural calm, like an animal trained to wait for the exact moment to strike. This isn't arrogance. It's raw confidence, forged in situations where a mistake cost lives. Bradshaw knows the tension can spiral in the blink of an eye. He glances briefly at his colleagues. Officer Jared Reed, younger and nervous, has already begun searching the living room, pushing objects aside with abrupt, unceremonious gestures. A lamp falls, a picture frame shatters on the floor. Reed jumps, but continues. Marcus, still standing in the middle of the room, doesn't move an inch. He watches them impassively, almost as if assessing their every move and their flaws. The command falls, dry and sharp. Grab him. Put the handcuffs on him. An officer approaches, handcuffs in hand. Marcus lifts his head slightly, as if sensing a vibration in the air. It's at that precise moment that he understands. Escalation is inevitable. And yet, he still doesn't move. What the police don't know is that the man before them is no frightened civilian or ordinary suspect. Marcus Iite hasn't simply served. He's led classified missions in the darkest corners of the globe, infiltrated terrorist strongholds with his bare hands, negotiated with warlords, and led men in operations so secret they exist in no official record. He is a survivor, a strategist, a human weapon, and above all, he knows every beat of his own heart, every muscle in his body ready to explode if necessary. But today he doesn't want to fight. His voice cuts through the air, sharp as a razor blade. You have a very, very bad idea about what you just did. A shudder runs through the room. Marcus turns slowly, unhurriedly, toward a low table. His gestures are controlled, almost ceremonial. On the wooden surface, next to a worn military tactics book and an old field lighter, lies an inconspicuous but significant object, an oval badge, engraved with the words Delta Force, Level 1, accompanied by a medal with a sober ribbon but adorned with a silver star. The whole thing, stored in a small black velvet box, betrays a truth that the police can no longer ignore. They have just forced entry into a sanctuary, not a criminal den. Bradshaw frowns. Doubt is brewing. But before he can react, a new sound breaks the electric atmosphere. Slow footsteps on the wooden stairs, and a female voice, calm but filled with a hidden menace. Kyle, I hope you have the right documents, because you're going to have to explain this very clearly to my husband. All eyes turn to the figure descending the stairs. A woman in her 40s, wearing a dark silk house dress, barefoot, but with the bearing of a queen. Her black hair is pulled back in a tight bun, her gaze a mixture of intelligence, contempt, and alertness. She holds a phone in her hand, its screen still lit, as if ready to dial a number no one here would want to see. She stops halfway up the stairs. Her voice falls, cold and assured. Mr. Iite, please let them finish. A glance exchanges between her and her husband. A silent complicity. She reads him like an open book. She knows Marcus hasn't acted yet only because he's chosen not to. Another version of him would have already overpowered the 3 police officers without any of them having time to blink. She turns slowly toward the officers. Her eyes fall on Bradshaw, who suddenly seems smaller, less sure of himself. Detective Bradshaw, you entered this place without a warrant, based on an anonymous tip. You pointed a gun at a decorated veteran and threatened to handcuff a man whose military record probably makes your superiors shudder. Bradshaw opens his mouth, but no words come out. She descends the last steps elegantly and approaches her husband. Then, staring at the inspector with icy intensity. My name is Dr. Morgan Iite, Chief of Staff at Walter Reed. And yes, I am that man's wife. A silence falls. Even Reed, who had been agitated until then, stops in his tracks. Bradshaw takes a step back. My husband is a hero, gentlemen. He's nothing like what you're looking for. You made a mistake, a monumental one. And now you'll have to face the consequences. The police officers exchange nervous glances. The atmosphere has suddenly thickened, like a storm about to break. The silence that falls is not one of respect, but of uncertainty in the face of a force they do not yet fully understand. Bradshaw, until now so sure of himself, begins to feel the ground shake beneath his certainties. He knows the name Iite, not just from having seen it appear in a few confidential files or snatches of conversations between officers. The name circulates in certain closed circles, in hushed tones, always accompanied by that strange hesitation that betrays fear more than admiration. He finally takes a closer look at Morgan Iite. She's not just Marcus's wife. She's the visible heart of this enigmatic family. A medical doctor, neurotrauma specialist, international speaker, and fierce civil rights activist, Morgan has built an impeccable reputation, but that's only a fragment of what she truly embodies. Her involvement in social causes, her ability to engage with both elites and working-class neighborhoods, earn her as much respect as she does silent fear. And yet, despite her notoriety, she remains fiercely discreet, just like her husband. Marcus Iite, a name even the special services mention with caution. He's not just a veteran. He's a survivor of theaters of operation whose very existence is classified. A man whose skills surpass those of ordinary special units. A man trained to bring down governments without leaving a trace. Bradshaw begins to understand the magnitude of what he has just unleashed. "I want you to leave my house immediately," Marcus said, his voice deep, almost low, but its vibration held a lingering violence. Each word was measured, and behind this calm facade, one felt the power of a wild beast ready to pounce. "Otherwise, you won't like what you discover." The young agent on the right, a man named Holloway, takes a step back. His finger slowly slides off the trigger of his weapon, and he glances anxiously at his superior officer. He now understands that this mission, which was supposed to be a simple verification operation, has just crossed a red line. Bradshaw, despite his growing discomfort, tries to maintain a posture of authority. However, he feels his blood run cold as he considers what this kind of mistake could entail. If Marcus Iite is indeed who he thinks he is, then this moment could signal much more than the end of his career. It could send shockwaves through circles he doesn't understand. "I'll call my superiors," he says finally, his voice trembling slightly, his fingers nervous as he reaches for his phone. He tries to hide his panic behind a mock calm, but even his gaze betrays him. Morgan, who had remained silent until then, takes a step forward. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. "You have no idea what you've just unleashed, Inspector. My husband and I have spent our lives staying away from the turmoil. But that doesn't mean we're without resources. Or allies." She glances quickly at her phone screen, then turns it toward Bradshaw. "In 3 minutes, your face will be on every internal agency network. And I'm not talking about the police." Bradshaw feels a drop of sweat slide down his temple. Marcus, for his part, turned to his wife. His gaze was no longer hostile. It was gentle, trusting, almost tender. A peaceful light in the eye of a man made for chaos. "Nothing to worry about, Morgan. It's only a matter of time." Because he knows it, deep down, this day had to come. He had managed to remain in the shadows for years, raising his children in protective anonymity, serving his country on the margins, where the cameras never film. But you can't erase your tracks forever when you've walked through so many forbidden lands. What Marcus doesn't yet know is that this police error is much more than an isolated incident. It's the first crack in a facade built up over decades. What these men have awakened, what they have unleashed by walking through his door, is more than a personal awakening. This is the opening of a chapter in which Marcus Iite will no longer be able to simply survive in silence. He will have to choose, fade away once and for all, or take up arms again, in a different way. In a world where abuses of power are disguised as legality, where truth dissolves into politics, and where black faces are still viewed with suspicion, Marcus Iite will not be content to simply defend himself. He was going to counterattack. And this time, it wouldn't be in the shadows.